Welcome to Issues and Answers with your host Diane Kinderwater. Issues and Answers is presented as a public service to inform, educate, and better the lives of New Mexicans. And now, Issues and Answers with your host Diane Kinderwater.
Welcome to the program. I'm Diane Kinderwater. We should know that the election is coming up, the November 7th election. It's a Tuesday, it's coming up. Very important positions are up for election. We have a number of city councilors. We've invited them to be guests, and those who have accepted our invitation have been introduced to you. Also, Albuquerque Public Schools, there are a number of positions open, a number of seats on the school board, and those invitations have gone out to all the candidates, and those who have accepted have been our guests. And I'm so pleased to introduce you today to Steve Cecco. He is running for the APS School Board District 4. He's going to tell us all about where District 4 is located. And it tends to be that school board members, school board positions don't have a heavy turnout. But now we have the election for a number of other positions on November 7th, and the school board positions are on November 7th as well, so we expect a higher turnout. But we're going to introduce you to Steve Cecco right after this and why he's running for APS School Board in District 4. We'll meet Steve in just a second.
Hey America, now there's a place where we can join our voice, Real America's Voice. Real America's Voice is coming to a town near you with a grassroots approach, bringing the real voice of America together. Real America's Voice is growing our family of networks across the country, and soon you could be part of that change. Download the Real America's Voice app and join other Americans just like you across the country, coming together for real change.
Okay, it's very important to have school board members. APS is one of the largest school districts in the entire nation. We have it right here in New Mexico. And it's important because it affects all of our lives, not just the students and teachers, but also all of us, because the product from our APS school districts live on with us forever. And that product will be a well-trained, well-educated kid or student. Steve Cecco, thank you for being part of this program. You are running for APS School District 4, the school board position, and we welcome you to the program.
Thank you, Diane. I'm happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Election is just around the corner. A lot of people can early vote or have done the absentee or show up on November 7th.
Mm-hmm. Yep, they've already started voting. The absentees went out on the 10th, and early voting started on the 11th.
So there's no excuse, correct?
No excuse.
Steve Cecco, you ran for, I think, the House of Representatives for the legislature, and now a second time running will be for the APS School Board. Yes. Why are you interested in being a school board member for APS?
I think it's important that we raise the outcomes for our children so we can give them a fighting chance once they move into the secondary schools and then on into life. They need the skills, they need the reading, they need the math, and we haven't been executing that in the last decade that I've been watching, but I've been told it's longer than that.
Yes, sadly, for it seems like forever we've been at the bottom of many lists in New Mexico as in regards to our educational product. And
yes.
Again, that's our student. But you are a mortgage broker here in New Mexico. What kind of effect has our educational product had on you as a mortgage broker? What have you seen?
Well, what I see, Diane, is that we're not putting out quality education, and people are not moving into our industry. My industry, the average age at this point in time is 57. We need to raise the outcomes so that we give our children a fighting chance at success and get out of the basement. We can't stay in the bottom forever. We have to do something, and the only way to do that is change.
What kind of change would you like to see? What kind of change would you bring to the APS School Board?
Right now, they have a strategic plan in place. They have goals set up, and goals and guardrails, they call it. The goals are to raise the outcome for the children for grade 3. Because as you know, Diane, from grade 1 to grade 3, you're learning how to read. From
Or
grade,
supposed to learn how to read.
Yes.
Supposed
yes,
to
ma'am.
learn how to read.
From grade 4 on up, you're reading to learn. So if you don't know the basics on reading, then you're not going to be successful moving on.
Learning those other subjects that require reading. So you
Correct.
can't read the textbooks, or I don't even know if they use textbooks. You can't read online. Those grades 4 and above, the subject matter, the history,
Yes,
even the
correct.
math, the social studies, the civics classes, you can't learn those other topics unless you have learned to read by grade 3, and we know our students haven't been able to read. Majority. Not a majority, I don't know what the statistic is, but
Well, in my district, Diane, there's 25% that have reached their grade level reading, which is terrible. If you go into the children that are special education, you're in single digits. That's horrifying to me. What we need to do is raise the bar, raise the outcomes so that our children are able to read in grade 3, and those have to be measured with the goals that we have in place. And then the guardrails are for the superintendent to be held accountable to those, and he goes out through the principals and then down to the teachers in order to teach to those levels.
so that's one of the goals. Before we get into the goals, tell us, where is District 4?
District 4 is basically the international zone. And then you go down to Kirtland Air Force Base. We have some schools on the base there. The only high school in my district is Highland. Then the way that the district's gerrymandered, you can go to Comanche and Eubank. Then you come in towards Manal. Then you wind up by Wyoming, and then over by the UNM area as well. Some places.
But the feeder
in there.
school, all the elementary and middle schools feed into Highland.
That's correct.
So if a parent or an interested citizen lives in a school, in an area where the feeder schools lead to Highland, they would be looking at District 4 on the ballot.
Correct.
So this goal is one of the 4 goals that APS School Board, the current school board, created.
Yes.
You would like to bring change, but I imagine you agree with this first goal.
I do. I agree with their strategic plan. Peggy
Mueller,
Mueller-Aragon and Courtney Jackson, Crystal, Tapia, and actually it was a 7-0 vote. They all voted to pass that. So now what needs to happen is there's 3 functions of an APS board member. 1 is budget, 2 is policy, and then 3 is directing and hiring a superintendent. So I do have a background in finances, so I think I would have good input for the budget. Policies, I work on many boards, so I believe that I will have good input on that, and I do hire and fire. So as not being an educator for decades as some were, I do have some background. I train loan officers and I teach continuing education, but not full-time in the classroom. So I think I have other gifts that I can help with.
and again, hiring a superintendent, giving them directives is big this year for this
Very
new
important.
upcoming school board. I think there's 7 members of the school board.
Yes.
Because they would be hiring, or they should be hiring, a new superintendent to start in 2024. Of those 4, the budget, the directives to the superintendent, and the policy, do you think they all have equal weight in determining the outcome of our students?
Well, I think policy is number 1 because we need to make those goals and guidelines so that we have something to measure. If you don't have a plan, then you're probably going to fail. So they've been kind of wallowing for a while, and I don't think they had the plan in place and be able to measure it. One of the guardrails for the accountability will be that the superintendent will give a report every month at our board meetings so that we can measure that and make sure that we're going according to pace to raise those outcomes for the kids.
And then regarding the budget?
Well, the budget is the allocation of the money, and we have a huge budget. APS is a $2.3 billion budget, so I'm not quite sure, because I'm not in the midst of it yet, why that's not allocated and used in the places that it needs to be used, but I have ideas about that, but no conjecture.
Maybe is it about 20, I don't know, anywhere between $23,000 to $28,000 a year per student at APS, that budget, if we're going right to the student?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's actually a little bit higher than that. So it's between 27 and 30. That's what they're
per student,
talking
and the
about.
children still cannot read. Back in our day,
Unfortunately.
they learned to read. What do you think is going on? Why aren't they reading? I mean, we have the money, $30,000 per student. We could have a private tutor, pay a private tutor $30,000 a year and teach them to read.
Well, I believe that the teachers, I believe every child can learn. If you raise the bar, then they usually come up to meet the bar. If you leave them laying down there, it's, the path of least resistance, and I think that's what's been happening. Without saying anything derogatory, I believe that we could do much better if we're doing the measurements and measuring those outcomes and expecting the kids to get to a certain place. The teachers also, we want them to be in and buy into it. Matter of fact, you've heard that expression, it takes a village. We need the families, we need the students, we need the teachers, the principals, us, and the superintendent. Everybody's got to buy into this in order for it to work.
Of course, that's probably almost a seventh or an eighth of the students are first, second, and third graders. I mean, we have the higher grade, but it's concentration, I imagine, should be at the first, second, and third grade.
Yeah, you got to start somewhere.
Well, I mean, you have to start with the kids reading.
Yeah.
So if you have a buy-in from everybody, I imagine it's the parents and the teachers and the principals of those grades.
Yes. And there are things that come into play from a family perspective, some family unit breakdown issues, some language barriers, but those need to be addressed per school, per child, so that they're all receiving what they need to succeed. And it's easier said than done, so it's going to take some work. But I've been doing some research on what they call the Mississippi Miracle. I don't know if you've heard about that.
Well, we used to say, thank God for Mississippi.
Yeah,
but now they're saying, thank God for New Mexico, because it used to be Mississippi was behind.
Back and forth. Mm-hmm.
In terms of ranking for educational outcomes. It used to be we were 50th or they were 50th, one of us. But when we were 49th, they were saying, thank God for Mississippi because they're below us. But now
they're in 32nd place. And
what happened in Mississippi?
They put in the outcomes. They made the kids, not made the kids, but they brought the expectation and they brought everybody in and they met those expectations, and the outcomes were, 32nd. That's not bad within a 10-year period. And if we can get to that place, that's an awesome start.
What do you have to offer APS as a board member? You said change. I mean, we've been 50th, seems like forever. We have a big, huge budget in there. What do you want? What can you bring to see that things are going to change?
Well, I think working together with the superintendent and the other board members, my background from, like I said, finance and budget type issues, writing some policy. I believe that I'll have some good input there. I believe that we can make the change, and once it gets put into place, I believe boards that come after us, once you have the thing in place, the outcomes and the strategic plan, and it's working, they just have to execute it.
But it seems, and I've talked to other candidates, that APS board, the current board before the election, did put in those 4 objectives that I understand are kind of permanent. One is making sure they read, and the other one is dealing with math and science and whatnot.
Yeah.
So those, it seems like that board put in place goals that future boards are supposed to follow.
That's correct.
So
and very good too. I believe that they came up with the strategic plan, and they're starting to execute it, and they're not only wanting to evaluate and hold the superintendent accountable, but I go to the board meetings and I see that they are measuring themselves. Have we gotten this piece done? Have we gotten that piece done? And they're slowly but surely making progress. So they're moving forward. They also brought in some outside organizations. One that was, I can't remember the names of them. That'll escape me until I leave. But the first one was they came in and got guidance on what does it take to run a good board. And they took that and they started to implement some of those practices. They brought in another group that worked with large urban school systems, of which APS is one of the largest in the country. And this is what it takes in order to get to the outcomes that you're looking for, and these are the procedures and policies that you put in place that work. So they really had a good base, and I'm excited to be able to be part of that.
What's most important, you think, the measurement, or the buy-in, or the belief?
Well, I think it's all, obviously we want the outcomes. Without the buy-in, you're not going to get the outcomes that as quickly or as high as you expect. So we have to bring the families in, we have to bring the community in, the teachers, the principals. Because sometimes what I've been seeing is they're kind of downtrodden because they don't feel like they're having enough support. And we need to be able to support them.
And who's that?
The board, the superintendent, the principals,
They're not
and
feeling
the
the support.
community.
They're not feeling the support.
The teachers and the principals. There's some principals that have taken the measures seriously and already knew how to put different things in place. Those schools are turned around. So it's not that it can't happen. And we hear a lot about, New Mexico and the welfare and the poverty. Well, you can't get any poorer. If you think New Mexico's poor, look at Mississippi, dirt poor, and they still reach their outcomes and surpass them. So our kids can learn. We need to give them
Are
a
we
chance to do
implementing
that.
some of the things that Mississippi did?
Yeah.
The board,
The outcomes, yeah.
the board
Yeah.
did that. What are you looking for in a superintendent?
Looking for someone who has a proven track record working in a large school system, somebody who's willing and able to work with the board and his teachers and principals to make sure that we're giving the kids what they need at whatever level it is. It's not a simple project, but we need somebody strong in that position in order to make everything work as well as it can.
But have a proven track record. You mentioned, and again I'm interviewing, or we're visiting with Steve Cecco, who is running for the APS school board position, District 4, mainly the international district. In addition to reading, that's certainly important, of course.
Yep.
What other things, what other priorities would you have for APS?
By grade 8, they need to be proficient in math skills. Moving on past that, we want them to be proficient in some life skills. Because as you know, Diane, when we get into the big wide world, we have to be able to work and play well with others. So we need some life skills to be able to do that. Unfortunately, we live in a very technical society right now. Everybody's on a device. Well, we need more interaction. We need to be more social. We need to be able to work together as a team, and we need to be able to help our children do that as well.
And that's one of the goals as well, which is kind of something you think comes naturally. Of course, what doesn't necessarily come naturally is knowing about mortgage banking. And if a person wants to own a home, they need to know those numbers. And I believe financial literacy is something that I think the legislature now is requiring.
Yeah.
What do you think about financial literacy? I don't really like the term financial. Knowing about money.
Yeah.
How money
Knowing
works.
about money, budgeting, being able to balance a checkbook or a bank statement or something online these days. We always had paper, but back in my day.
So you as a mortgage broker, mortgage banker, what do you think is important for our students, of course, people who've even graduated from high school, but we can start with the students in high school, middle school. What do they need to know about money?
Well, they need to know how to use it. They need to know how to save it. They need to know about credit and what credit impact has on their future. Because if you're applying for a mortgage, one of the major components is the credit. Well, unfortunately, when they get into college, there's tables set up all over the place that want to give them these credit cards, and they don't understand really how they work until they're a few $1,000s in debt, because you don't see, it's not tangible, the money. So
It's going to be less tangible in the future.
Well, yeah, if they have anything to do with it. It's a world.
It's all going to be plastic or not
currency.
even plastic. So that's certainly important for our kids. I remember when I was in high school, saving. The interest rate back then, I don't want to date myself, but was like 14%, and I was saving a CD, 14, 15%. And I said, is that good rate? Should I take a 6 months or a year? And they said, yeah, that's a good rate. So interest rates, of course, are critical to know.
Yes. Well, they have a lot to do with people qualifying for a mortgage on one side. On the other side, it's their return on their savings. So and when you have the high interest rates, like when we were growing up, it was great to have CDs. We could make some money on it. Then when the rates went down so low, anybody could buy a house, but saving, you had to be smart, investing your money, and maybe putting it in real estate. So things change, and that's all part of financial literacy.
Yes. Sorry, that's an interest I have. Steve, Cecco, we have just a few minutes left. What would you like to touch upon about yourself, your background, what you would bring to the board to make people understand who you are and what you would like and why they may want to vote for you?
Well, I've been in my district for 31 years. I've been in the home that I own now for over 25 years in the district. But when we first came to town, I still lived in the district, but in different places. My wife was going to school, I was working, so forth and so on. Now we've been established. We raised 4 kids through the school system. My wife was a teacher for a while. I think that I bring a lot to the table because of the fact that I think about the children more than other issues. Again, without trying to be derogatory to anyone, I believe that they should come first, and I believe that I can help do that. And I believe that if anybody has any questions, they could always call me. I have my cards. I have a website, Cecco for NewMexico.com. You can volunteer, you can donate, you can leave your comments, you can ask questions. My phone number's on there. I believe that I'm going to have to be out in the community, in my district, in order for me to really be helpful to those folks, the families and the kids.
When you say put students first, how is that done?
Well, you think about them ahead of, let me just say this. Whenever there's an agenda or something happening, I always tell people, follow the money, because that's how a lot of decisions are made, all the way through. So I believe that we need to have that money follow the children and be able to give them the tools they need to be the most successful.
Do you think the schools such as yours in the International District that has only 25%, a quarter of the students being able to read at grade level, those schools should be receiving more money than other schools?
Well, they need to look at, is it being equitably distributed, and what schools need what, and what type of teachers do we need in those schools in order for them to be effective and to be able to raise the outcomes. Do we need more bilingual in a certain place because we have some, English as learning a second language? Do we have folks that need more help from a standpoint of, having learning disabilities? Whatever it may be, we need to match that. And the only way we'll know that is if we bring the community in, and we're out in the community talking to people and finding out what the community needs.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Steve Cecco. He's running for APS Board Member District 4, mainly the International District, and a feeder school to Highland High School. We at KCHF TV invited all the board members or potential board members who are running for APS board as guests in the program. Those like Steve Cecco who have accepted our invitation have been introduced to you. Remember, election date is Tuesday, November 7th. Thank you for watching this program. I'm Diane Kinderwater. Make it a great week with your family. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
The New Mexico Modern Child Support Family Program works to benefit both parents for the purpose of improving children's lives. It provides the basics of child support, but goes further by helping parents step up to find better job opportunities that get them back on track to paying their monthly child support obligation. Find out how the Child Support Step Up program can help your modern family. Contact New Mexico Child Support today to learn more.
Issues and Answers with your host Diane Kinderwater is presented as a public service to inform, educate, and better the lives of New Mexicans. To comment on today's program or to purchase a copy of any Issues and Answers program, visit sunbroadcasting.org or call us at 505-345-1991.